Alright, hi there YouTube, it's me Morphsuit America, and in this video I'll be talking about photon spheres and Excubes. I've already done a video talking about this, and if you want to view it or just get right into it, then you can check that old video out. However, it's kind of lengthy and it's not that great, so I'm redoing it in the year 2019 and when episode 6 is out. Understand that episode 6 is the new era of PSO2 right now, and they added a lot of stuff. A lot of very handy a lot of handy features, a lot of new weapons, a lot of new units, etc, etc. So if you are interested in either getting back into the game or playing this game, understand that this game is translated and you can download this game through PSO2 Tweaker. Now if you don't know how to use PSO2 Tweaker, I made a personal video talking about how to do X, Y, and Z, so check that out in the description below. Also know that you can technically get this game for free on the PSN, but the thing is you have to make a Japanese account, and I did say I'll make a video talking about that, and it's still in the making since I'm actually not playing with my PS4 right now. However, I will get to it. This video is directed more towards new players, however this can be directed towards some returning players depending on when you stop playing the game. Obviously, if you are playing the game and if you are active when it comes to playing this game, this video isn't going to be that grand, or it's not going to give you that much information because you should know most of these things by now. And if not, then this video will kind of enlighten you guys on why you want to get Excubes and Photon Spheres. There will be time skips in the description below so you can go to certain parts of this video so you don't need to listen to my rambling here and there. You might be wondering, what are Excubes and Photon Spheres? Now, Excubes and Photon Spheres are a different currency, but it's not an actual currency that's listed in your menu over here. You can see that there's the AC items over here, or the AC currency, the star gems, the meseta, and then the fun points. I'll go into more details about fun later because I already made a video talking about it, but since it's a new year, new episode, and I got new tech, I will remake that video. And if you just want to view it so you can quickly get as much fun points as you can get so you can do fun scratches, then I already made a video, check it out in the description below. Anyways, Photon Spheres and Excubes are different currencies that you can use so you can get more items from the Excube shop and Photon Sphere shop. And obviously I'm going to show you guys what you can get from these shops. However, you might be wondering, how do I exactly get these Excubes and Photon Spheres? When it comes to these two items, you're going to be trading a bunch of junk, specifically a bunch of 10, 11 star or even 12 star weapons so you can get Photon Spheres or Excubes, or even like 10 star, 11 star units, because right now a lot of people are aiming for 14 star, 15 star weapons and then 12 star units as their end gear. This will change depending on how far we progress in the game and when you're looking at this video. But understand that Photon Spheres and Excubes just allow you to get more things. Granted that when it comes to this game, there are other currencies that aren't really listed in the menu, but there's too many to go by, and pretty much you're going to be trading in a bunch of items like metals, a bunch of stones, or a bunch of mats that is specifically lists, so you can try to get better gear, better units, better weapons, or at least get something out of it. It's not just Photon Spheres and Excubes, but the only reason why I'm bringing this up is to give you guys a heads up of, like, this game is very grind heavy and it utilizes a lot of trading here and there. But for Excubes and Photon Spheres, those are going to be the main item currencies that you will be using every now and then. Alright, you might be wondering, how do I get to these shops, or the Photon Sphere shop and the Excube shop? There's two ways to do this. You can either walk there or you can try to jump there. Walking, all you need to do is get to the main floor area of the shop area, then take the stairs left before you hit the casino. Go to the very last two on the far left, and this is where you can find the Photon Drop shop and the Excube shop. The alternative method is to actually use the jumper and then kind of walk a few steps to that shop or those shops. And I just demonstrated it right there, and then bada bing bada boom, you're in front of these two NPCs. So, with that being said, you might be wondering, how do I get Excubes and Photon Spheres? That's a very good question. When it comes to getting these other items, you will actually be toying around with the Recycle Shop. There's two ways to actually go to the Recycle Shop. You can go there physically, or you can just bring it up on your menu. And when you bring it up on your menu, it's going to be at the shopping cart icon, the second to last icon from the right. You go to the second to last line, aka the fourth line, and then you click on that, and you're going to see this thing right here. Now, since I am going to be talking about Excubes and Photon Spheres, I'll just focus on that. Anything else you can view at your own time, and I'll make a separate video kind of talking about the Recycle Shop again, and talk about all these various items. But you can view this at your own discretion. Now, I'll point out the first three though, because this is what you're going to be toying around with most of the time, especially when it comes to the 10-star, 11-star weapons, and then the 10-star and 11-star units. Now, in the past, I would have said you have to be careful and think about what you want to trade in, because some of the 10 stars may be very handy to particular 11-star because it could give you set bonuses. Some of the 11-star weapons might be very useful because they're all class weapons, and etc, etc. But here's the thing though, since we're on episode 6, since it's far away from the past, most 11-star and 10-star weapons and units are obsolete. Now, it's not truly obsolete. They are handy in their own way depending on the situation that you're in, especially if you're leveling up a new character and they don't meet the requirements of any gear that you have for your end game character. Let's say you have a 15-star, but since you made a new character, obviously they can't equip that 15-star right off the bat, so you're gonna have to have something temporarily. And if you are a returning player or an old player, then this kind of goes to your advantage, just because you might have an old weapon that they could use depending on, once again, certain factors like what class they are, if they're playing a class that can actually use that weapon, and etc, etc. So just to keep that in mind. But overall, not to be blunt and mean towards what might have potential, 10-star and 11-star weapons and units aren't that great anymore. They can help you, don't get me wrong. They can help you during certain thresholds and depending on wherever you're at. But overall, when it comes to the end game stuff, it's going to be 12-star units because they are a lot better than 11-star units. And then when it comes to the weapons, it's going to be a 14-star or 15-star, and you can customize it depending on whatever you need. But yeah, this is just like the first three that you're toying around with when it comes to getting your Excubes and Photon Sphere. All you need to do is trade in at least one 10-star or 11-star weapon to get Excubes. When it comes to this one, you just need to trade in one rarity weapon of a 10-star, and then for the Photon Spheres, you need to trade in 5 10-star units so you can get one Photon Sphere. Depending on what you need more of, then that's what you're gonna do. Best approach for this, if you want an even amount, would be to trade in a decent amount of 10-star weapons and then a good amount of 11-star or 10-star weapons to get your Excubes. Personally, for me, what I tend to do is use the use the weapons, 10-star and 11 stars to get Excubes, and then use units to get my Photon Spheres. And then once again, there's these other options too, but I personally don't use them as much because I can get better perks out of them, especially when it comes to the 13 stars. You don't really want to give them away because you want to desynthesize them for the materials you need for crafting or converting, and etc, etc. And I'll try to make a separate video talking about crafting later. However, I'm not the best crafter, / I'm not good at crafting, or I haven't leveled up crafting stuff yet, so don't come to me when it comes to crafting stuff. I know the basic, but not everything, or how to do particular things for that. So you might be wondering, where is the second method, or what is the second method of going to the Recycle Shop? Now, this one you may not want to do, but I am going to state it because there might be some things you may want to look at later on your own time. And I'll make a separate video kind of mentioning this again. But when it comes to the pass, we had to run to this guy all the way over here because we never had this option of bringing up the menu and just doing the recycle shop. You can also bring up the recycle shop on the camp ship too. So if you are in an emergency quest and you don't have a lot of space, you can trade in your 10-star, 11-star weapons and units so you can clear up some space so you can spam the quest again. But this NPC right here is the guy that we used to go to so we can get Excubes and Photon Spheres because, yeah, he was a thing in the past. But nowadays, a lot of people just bring it up in the menu. The reason why, once again, I bring him up is because of the fact that he has these other benefits. But for this video, I'm not going to go into it. I'll make a separate video talking about him again. But for now, let's continue on. Before we get into these shops, I do want to mention a few things. One of them specifically for the Photon Drop shop, you want to pick up any sort of photon thingies you see on the field. So if you see a photon crystal, pick that up. If you see a photon sphere, pick that up. If you see a photon drop, pick that up. It's going to help you out in the end goal. But make sure you pick up anything that has photon in it. Slightly, it depends on how much storage space you got, but specifically the Photon Drop, Photon Crystal, and Photon Sphere. Now when it comes to the Excubes, I do want to mention that there are a couple quests, or since it's episode 6 now, ultra hard quests for sure will allow or will drop a bunch of Excubes every now and then. Because most likely the reason why they're doing this is because it'll save up a lot of space in your inventory so you can pick up the more important items like the 13-star weapons and above, the 12-star weapons, the S1, S2, S3 abilities I can drop through a quest. It's just gonna cut back on the it's gonna give you more space in your inventory so you don't need to go into a recycle shop, stop questing so you can go to the recycle shop and then trade it all in so you can get your Excubes. It kind of gives you a bit of breathing space and it gives you a bit more time so you can focus more on the grinding. However, grinding is very tedious and it does get boring, so make sure you have a bunch of friends so you can actually grind together and share the pain together. Unless one of them gets like something shiny that you want and then you get jealous of them and then stuff happens. But yeah, anyways, I digress. Alright, so I'm not going to go into a lot of details about both the Photon Drop shop and the Excubes. I'll highlight a few things and why you might want to consider doing them, but let's go to the Photon Drop shop. Alright, so for the Photon Drop exchange shop, it may be a bit intimidating, but it's not that complicated, and I'll kind of point out what you may want to consider. When it comes to the Photon Crystal and the Photon Drops I mentioned earlier, the reason why I want to pick everything up that has Photon in the name is because you can convert these items into Photon Spheres. So if you have 99 Photon Drops, for example, you can get 1 Photon Sphere out of it. If you have 10 Photon Crystals, you can exchange them so you can get 1 Photon Sphere. And then when it comes to the crystals, you just need to exchange like 10 Photon Drops. Now, it may be, once again, a bit intimidating, but it's pretty straightforward. All of these are techniques and photon arts you may want to get. Specifically, I'll state that you guys may want to get these, unless you plan to farm for them, but you need to actually farm Ultimate Quest to get these 3 compound techniques. This is a shortcut way, but if you don't have a lot of Photon Spheres, you either will need a farm you need to farm Ultimate Quest so you can actually complete the client order from an NPC to get these 3 compound techniques for free, or you need to farm a lot so you can get a bunch of Photon Spheres, trade them in so you can get your 3 techniques. It's whatever method you want to go for. But yeah, I will bring up these Photon Arts and techniques again later when I talk about the Excube shop. Just know that these are at level 1, and you can get these cheaply for... No, excuse me, you can get these cheaply by trading in a crystal instead of a sphere, so keep that in mind. Other than that, there's these things over here, nothing too grand. It does help you out when it comes to, well, I don't know what it'll be helpful for. There are some things it can be useful for, but I personally don't get these, along with these as well. The mag stuff or the support devices are directed more towards your mag. What I would use most of my Photon Spheres for would be the experience gain boosters and the compound techniques, if I don't have it, are a particular character that's going Force main or Techer main. And then, what else? These food devices. Now, the reason why you may want to start using these is so you can speed up your feeding process, because when it comes to feeding your mag a particular item, they have to wait till that gauge that they have goes down. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, is this gauge right here, their energy gauge. They go by, what, 33%, so a third of whatever it is. So if they're at 33, for example, you can feed them 2 times before it hits max energy level. If it's at 66%, you can only feed it 1 time. The markers are pretty much 33, 66%, and 99%. So if it's below that, if it's below a certain number, let's say if it's below 66, you can only feed it once. If it's below 33, you can only feed it twice. If it's above 66 and below 99, you can't feed it until it actually hits like 66 or lower. But yeah, pretty much that's it for the Photon Drop Shop. Nothing too grand about it. Once again, personally for me, I would focus more on the XP game boosters and the mag devices, or the mag food, and then the compound techniques. When it comes to the grind reductions, they were useful. Emphasis on the words useful, because O-type grinding was a thing, and you needed these things to actually stop that failure to kick in for O-type grinding. But since we got new type grinding, these things became obsolete. So yeah, these things are useless now, sadly. Unless you go back to O-type grinding, then you might want to use those. But if you have a bunch of them, especially if you're an old player, then shouldn't really spend as much. And lastly, we are at the Excube shop. Now, this is going to be very long because the Excube shop has a lot of options, especially when it comes to these disc and technique exchange. Understand that when it comes to the compound techniques, though, you cannot level them up, so you will be stuck at level 1, but they're still goddamn powerful. So, what I do want to point out is that some of the techniques that you saw in the Photon Drop Shop, you can buy over here at level 17. For example, the one I knew right off the bat, it's what is it? It should be somewhere. End of track, for example. That was one of the techniques. That's one of the photon arts you can get over at the Photon Drop Shop. However, that was at a level 1, and it was what? You can use like 1 photon crystal to get it, or 10. Can't remember the exact number. But when it comes to end of track, you can see that 20 Excubes can give you a level 17 end of track. 20 Excubes isn't that bad of a deal. It will stack if you try to get everything, but then again, if you trade in a bunch of weapons so you can get a bunch of Excubes, it's not going to be too bad. It's worth the investment. Now, do you need to get all of these? No. Technically, you could try to farm for them, get the higher level as well by doing emergency quests or killing a bunch of mobs and monsters while you quest. However, if you just want to cut corners and actually get it right there and then you can spend your Excubes in these disc exchanges. Now, I'm not going to showcase every one of these. You can look at it at your own time and figure out what photon art you need to get for your new character. Let's go to the main meat of this shop, the Excube shop. So here's the main Excube shop. Now, I'm going to break it down rather quickly and try to be short just because I want to cut back time on this video. So there are some items that you're familiar with, like the grinders, synthesizers, these fragments that you can get by desynthesizing stuff. But then there's a bunch of these items. So there are some very basic items that you can recognize right off the bat. This one in particular is more towards summoners, especially with their pets and their candy box and the orange blocks that they have in the candy boxes. But anyways, continuing on with the Excube shop, you can see that there's a bunch of units. These units are special because they have the Lucky Rise 1 bonus, which gives you a 5% to the rare drop rate, to your rare drop rate. Oh, to the overall chances of it. I don't know how it works exactly, but it gives you that ability. Now, what you can do is get a bunch of these and try to increase that lucky rides 1 to 2, and then 3, and maybe 4 and 5, but that's on your end, and that's a bit of manipulation and affixing on your part. But yeah, these units all have it, and depending on what units you want to go for it, if you want to get this unit. Now these things here are more of mag add-ons. They give you more abilities, and you can customize the perks and attacks that your mag can do every now and then. I'm not going to go into a bunch of details about this, you can look at it at your own time, but yeah, let's skim through it. Now for the PB, that's Photon Blast. That's the shiny being that you summon once you fill up your mag and you equip it on your sub palette. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll make a separate video going over that later when I redo my mag video. But yeah, when it comes to Photon Blast, you can actually change it. I personally don't get this anymore just because I just stick with the default one just because it just does the job. If I want to be very specific, then I actually need to look into this. But for now, I don't do it. And then these four I have no clue about. Then these are some basic stuff. They are boosters though in their own way that can help you with your grinding or fixing. And I'll get into a bit more. I'll get into details about them in a few seconds. And then lastly, I do want to emphasize on this mag level down device just because it's something that you may want to consider, especially if you do a little hiccup or slip up on your mag and trying to get it to whatever perfect stat you're trying to get it to. Like let's say 200 on dex, but you accidentally feeded something wrong and it gets like 3 points in striking, and you want to get rid of that. You can use the mag level down device so you can save 1, your own money, and 2, you don't need to buy a new mag, and 3, you don't need to go OCD about it. But this is how you can solve it. It's just that it's going to cost a lot because it costs 50 Excubes. Now, let's get to the important part. What should you get, especially if you're new to the game? Obvious one would be the rare drop rate booster. Now, if you don't really care about rare drop rate boosters, or you don't care about the percentage and you want to use your own RNG to actually get whatever you need to get, then that's on you. But by popping a booster, it allows you to get more 10-star, 11-star weapons and units. The more weapons and units you can trade off, the more Excubes and Photon Spheres you can get. The more Excubes and Photon Spheres you can get, the more stuff you can get over here. Granted that it depends on what you need specifically. Because if you want to get the compound technique, for example, you get to focus more on Photon Spheres instead of Excubes. If you want to get, let's say, a bunch of caramel crushes because you have a pet that needs to be cleaned out, or you need to get rid of all the orange gummies, or maybe you want to do it for all of your pets, then you're going to be focused on Excubes. So you see my point. However, when it comes to what other people use their Excubes on, I would say the grinders and synthesizers, maybe the grit success grind rate percents, the mag level down device, and then the ability success rate. Now, the reason why I point this out is because of the fact that when it comes to fixing something, it's kind of like a gamble, or you want to make sure it's not a gamble, because Monica and Doodoo will fuck you hard, or excuse me, they will fuck you over when it comes to you affixing something. And even if you have a 90%, there is that 10% that you may fail, and you may fail hard, and you may cry, or you may have wasted a bunch of money just trying to gamble. So personally for me, I try to give myself a guarantee by going for the 100% when it comes to ability transfers or me affixing something. And if you don't know about affixing, I made a playlist in the description below. I'm trying to update it, so wait till then. But yeah, that's why I spend most of my Excubes on the 30% and 40%. However, understand that the weekly missions can give you a bunch of ability success rate boosters depending on how many characters you have. So if you don't know about that stuff, or you don't know about the weekly and daily missions, you can see in the description below. But yeah, other than that, everything else is at your own discretion. So pretty much rare drop rate boosters, grinders, synthesizers, maybe the fun tickets depending on your needs or what you want to pull from the fun scratch. The mag level device down, maybe great success grind rate boosters, maybe the attribute enhanced plus 2%, and definitely the ability success rates 30 and 40%. Anything else is yeah, and you can look at it at your own time. Now, this is actually completely useless now, unless you go back to old type grinding, because this is only used for old type grinding. Try to use this on new type grinding, it's not going to work. You actually need to get this instead for new type grinding, which is why I said you might want to get this, but that's on you. But it's not too bad, 50 for 20. And when it comes to the fragments, you could obviously spend. Actually, when it comes to some of these everyday things you can try to acquire, like the fragments, you really don't want to trade the Excubes for that, because you can desynthesize something for it, or at least quote unquote buy them. Extreme passes, you get one every day, so it'll stack eventually if you don't use them. And technically you're not using them as much because we're not doing weekly Kletho and extreme quests, weekly time attacks and extreme quests anymore, so this will start to stack up eventually depending on if you use them a lot or not. Lambda grinders, this is kind of dumb. Don't spend your Excubes on it. I mean, if you really need to, then go ahead, but you can get Lambda grinders through emergency quests now, and also through the Griffin, and also through the Zieg's client orders. Like, I can get an easy whopping 70 plus Lambda grinders just by doing Zieg's client orders with all my characters. Weekly, mind you. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the Excube shop. So that concludes this video. Pretty much, this is just a redo of my old video where I talked about Excubes and Photon drops. It's just a bit more organized and a bit better in quality, question mark. I still don't know if it is good or whatnot because I'm toying around with settings. But anyways, yep, that's pretty much it. So if you guys got any questions, comments, concerns, put it down in the comments below. Pretty much I wanted to also emphasize on a few things that I really didn't emphasize in my last video. But understand that PSO2 is still the same. It didn't really change from that last episode too. They did implement a few things here and there, but at the same time, it's still the same format. It's still the same items that you can acquire. It's just that it depends on what you really need and if you're still new to the game or if you're not new to the game. Some of the stuff that may seem tempting at first since you're new to the game, you definitely don't need to get later on when you actually get the stuff and you hit the end game of PSO2. Like, Lambda grind is going to come easily to you along with like synthesizers and grind. Well, I wouldn't say synthesizers and grinders. It's not going to be abundant, but you can easily get them. And then there's also the fact that, like, what is it? Because of the daily and weekly missions, when it comes to those ability success boosters, you can easily acquire a lot of them just by doing weekly missions with your multiple characters. So that's it. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.